Welcome to our latest instalment of our podcast series. I'm Sean Dawson, Head of Insights here at DeVono Cresa. As we continue to navigate our way through the current crisis and as lockdown measures are gradually eased, businesses are focusing now on readying for a return to the office. Yet time away from the workplace and a greater acceptance of agile and remote working is now prompting businesses to reassess their real estate. The way in which office space is used and ultimately leased is likely to feature in those discussions. With a lack of certainty at the present time, tenants may well be looking for greater flexibility when committing to big ticket items such as the workplace. Could the flexible office market be the solution? So to discuss this, I've gathered a couple of my colleagues. We've got Gemma Foord, Head of Flexible Leasing, and Chris Lewis, Head of our Office Agency. Gemma, if I can come to you first, serviced office operators, like other businesses, will have taken a hit during this crisis. Do you think that they will be in a fit state to respond to clients' needs and emerge from this in a fit state?
Hi, Sean. I would say absolutely is the answer to that. They've changed the format of the space offering to adhere to the guidelines, the government guidelines, and they have done a hell of a lot of work. So they've spent the last couple of months in lockdown really looking into COVID compliant workspaces, what that means for them individually as a business, and also we've seen the mobilisation of a global coalition of flex operators who have looked with advisors to develop safe back to work guidelines that can ensure the compliance and actually can be rolled out en masse across multiple sites. So I think they've taken the time and used it wisely in order to get ready. And I think even the smaller operators who are less well funded, perhaps, if you want to look at it that way, they've also done the same, and they've used in-house expertise where they've had downtime, where their centres have been closed or even just running on skeletal staff with fewer members coming in, to really find, source and secure appropriate technology and furnishings, in addition to just the basics like extra cleaning and sanitisation to ensure the clients can have a safe return. So they really do understand the change on a fast scale, I suppose, and things like their supplier relationships will allow them, more than perhaps some of the landlords out there, to really respond in terms of necessary adaptations to their space at what we could call a relatively low cost for those smaller providers, and some large ones are taking on a larger spend to really try and future-proof.
And talking about adaptations, one of the greatest adaptations that these guys are going to have to be undertaking is to follow social distancing guidelines, and therefore the space that the providers will be able to offer is going to be limited. And historically, we're aware of the desk ratio being quite small in comparison to conventional space. How do you think they'll be able to overcome this?
Well, if that's a question to Chris, perhaps he'll answer slightly differently, but I think we both will come together on the point that the occupational ratio, albeit, has been built very much in the service world around a much denser proportion of space per workstation. That's because it accounts when you're effectively taking on a serviced or a managed space lease, your license, I should say, you're not looking at the space in the communal areas and the core of the building. So things like WCs and kitchens and communal spaces are not accounted for in that space offering, unless you are taking that within the four walls of your demise. So therefore, on balance, you will find the same density issues on the landlord traditional side than you will on the service side. So again, it's kind of clever space planning and efficiencies of that space planning that has allowed the more dense proportion of space. And again, because those communal areas that would often be accounted for in the traditional side within your suite are obviously not, therefore it presents a slightly different model, if that makes sense, but they still come out with the same issues around the COVID back to work.
So Chris, taking Gemma's point into account, the same issues with regards to social distancing are going to apply not just to flexible but to conventional leasehold space as well. So from a tenant point of view, we're pretty much looking at the like for like.
Yeah, I guess the difference is that in the conventional leasehold world, people pay on a square foot basis as opposed to a desk basis. And so the numbers appear to be a lot higher on the flexible than perhaps they do on the conventional. But there's no doubt that businesses are having to think very carefully about how they use their space, how they look at densities and occupancy of that space, and ultimately how they deliver a solution to their people that is both fit for purpose, but also provides a safe environment to work in. It's very much at the beginning of that journey as to what that really looks like and how that will ultimately kind of work.
So the current situation is quite clearly going to change people's views about taking not just serviced office space, but space in general. So do you see that the more traditional occupiers out there will start to look at a new approach, and serviced or flexible space being one of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's true to say that already traditional businesses had adopted very much a dual approach to the way they considered space. Service had already provided and flexible had already provided a really important kind of pressure valve for clients, really to deal with capacity issues around their existing traditional portfolio. The whole concept of core and flex was established some time ago, so it's not just a COVID-related thing. I think actually where flexible really comes into its own now is for businesses who are wrestling with a totally new operational model caused by COVID, meaning that work from home becomes a reality, meaning that agility is becoming baked into the operating model, where their real estate perhaps was considerably dated by comparison to the modern way of working. And so perhaps making big calls about taking new medium long-term leases is off the agenda, and therefore looking at how short-term solutions can be provided through flex is a genuine opportunity and an option. It also has the benefit at the moment of dealing with some of the issues around capex and reducing the amount of cost hit that a tenant's taking right now. And so going down the flex route means that you've got the big cost items around fit out, big cost items around elapse, fees, all the rest of it baked into a deal. So it's a much easier thing to manage from a cash flow point of view as well. And then the final part of it that's really interesting, and I think we'll see this develop a lot further over the coming months, is this whole kind of rebirth of regional markets. People who are able to work from their hometown rather than from home will look to do so, and the opportunity to provide flexible space in home markets is something that I think we'll start to see emerge out of this whole kind of change. And I think that will be principally facilitated by the flexible market.
And Gemma, one of the bigger ticket items that came out of what Chris was just talking about there was cost, and I think cost historically has always been for the serviced office market has been labelled as quite high in comparison. And how do you think the serviced office operators out there can respond to that?
Well, look, I think they can respond in a number of ways, shining a light on the fact that it will come out. Flexibility is king at the moment. People want the agility. They want less liability, especially when it comes to costs. They also want to assess how they return to work and what works for their businesses, how many people are going to stay working from home, because everyone now agrees that there will be a proponent of people who stay working from home, dependent on their roles and functions and whatnot. So I think they can assess that, especially those who can utilise some flex space, and whether that be, as Chris said, in local towns, or the hub and spoke model as people are talking about, which is effectively keeping a hub which may be the core office, especially if they're in a lease space, and there is there's no chance of changing that, or it may even work for them, so they're not even looking to, but they can adapt and employ additional offices in regional areas or even around London that will help workforce get around when we have such an issue with public transport, or people are shining a light on that. And when it comes to to pricing, I think that they're being very transparent, and with the flexibility, of course, people expect that there would be a small overage to adopt that flexibility, and they understand that these, managed operations, they do need to make a margin, otherwise they wouldn't be in existence. But saying that, I think everyone is understanding that this isn't a time to pull any punches. They're very much trying to work with clients on a case-by-case basis, whether that be their existing client base or new clients, to make sure that they can actually get the right deals to the right people. And it's not, when we model, we do a lot of financial modeling for our clients, whether they be traditionally flex or traditionally conventional leasing clients. And often, more often than not now, we're finding that actually over a 1 to 3 year basis, it is coming out on balance, on par. So again, I think it's the optics on this that are slightly skewed, and we always expose our clients to all the models out there to make sure they're getting the best deal.
So if I had to come to both of you and ask you just 2 reasons, in a most succinct manner, why flexible office space could be the solution for occupiers over the coming weeks, months, or even a longer term strategy. Could you name me 2, Chris?
So I think the first one is around the whole issue of kind of cost control, and actually it is related not so much to the kind of per desk cost that you've just been referring to, but actually the control of big chunks of expenditure at the moment. And so, the ability to take a smaller space, perhaps, yes, it might be slightly higher on a per square foot analysis or comparison, but in order to mitigate and reduce the immediate cost right now, it could be a sensible solution for that. Plus the investment that's gone into the sector over these last 2 years means that there are all sorts of solutions and all sorts of operators in all sorts of locations. And so you've got huge choice. So for me, it's the combination of that choice and the potential to contain cost in the short term that makes it really, really viable.
And Gemma?
Yeah, it's hard to come up with just 2, and I would, I would agree with everything Chris said. I think short-term liability is really where people's focus is, and also the adaptability. All of the operators are working hard and fast to be, agile, and I think that really works with businesses that are evolving and changing by the day at the moment. So even if we just look out as far as a few weeks or months, as opposed to years, I think they're the 2 fundamentals at the moment.
Excellent. So the current situation is quite clearly presenting some obvious challenges for businesses. It's also creating opportunities in a way that businesses can now look at the way that their workforce interacts with the workspace, how that then interacts with clients, and how that translates really into the whole real estate footprint. So it's clear as well from the conversation that we've reached an interesting juncture in the evolution of leasing of office space, and to pick on the points, the choice, the agility, the flex, and the short-term kind of ability to take space are overriding themes that are coming through from our short conversation. This is going to run and run, but we've got a short time here today, so I just want to quickly thank both of you for your comments and points on this. And as a firm, we remain here to offer our advice and support to all tenants, and this is a subject that won't be going away anytime soon. Thank you, guys.